Hello, and welcome to another episode of Undiscovered Beasts and Strange Phenomena. Please join our experienced and knowledgeable panel of hosts as we explore the great mysteries of our time: Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and unexplained phenomena.
Greetings out there. Welcome to From Beyond and Not of This Earth. I'm your host, William Pullin. As we did in the previous episode of this program, my good friend Mike Richburg will be joining us for a candid and straightforward conversation about the topic at hand. Tonight's topic, the UFO Cover-Up, and the idea that there has been a concerted effort by the powers that be to cover up the reality of the UFO problem. The belief in this scenario came about in the 1940s and has been developing ever since. We're going to examine the reality of the scenario. Is there a need for a UFO cover-up? And some different ideas concerning those topics. So, my friend Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, William. How are you this evening?
I'm good. It finally cooled off in Texas here, so I'm very happy about that.
Yes, I was glad to see that. That means it might be cooling off here in South Carolina soon.
I hope so. Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be down in the 80s.
I'm a big fan of cooler
soon.
weather, so yeah.
Yeah. It's all across the South. It's been pretty hot last few months. Typical hot summer in the South. Man, I'm really fired up about tonight's broadcast. It's a topic that I feel like is a very serious topic, William. I think you would probably agree with me there. The matter of a UFO cover-up. William, I want to jump right into it here, man, and ask you, just to get your rough take on this. Now, you and I haven't really talked about this previously too much, but I know it's a subject that's important to both of us. In your opinion, how long has a cover-up been going on?
If you examine the Roswell case of July 47, there was definitely a cover-up of the events that transpired with that event. Does that mean every case after that event was covered up? I'm not so sure about that, but I think that was the first clear-cut example of a cover-up of the UFO phenomenon that happened, whether that was from a military or a government point of view, or whether they were to blame for it or not. So after that, to my mind, the cover-up is more a effort to lessen the importance of the UFO topic. So it's not so much in the public eye. And I've had many discussions with my friend Don Smith during the Roswell Festival, when there actually were Roswell festivals prior to the COVID issue. And over lunch and dinner, we would always discuss the cover-up. Invariably, the topic would come up. And Don is of the opinion that it's a cover-up of ignorance, meaning that the government and the military really don't know what's going on. They just have no idea about how to address the issue. And I tend to think so, too. I think it's a cover of ignorance. But I guess it's the late 40s is a long way of saying that's when the cover-up kind of, at least in its earliest stages, began.
Well, certainly. And when you cite Roswell, the Roswell incident, I guess that, and I'm assuming a little bit here, that's largely in part to do to the what basically constituted a retracted statement in the newspaper type of thing, the flipping of the script, the changing of the story, so to speak. Yeah,
it was. And, the initial release was truthful. The initial release ordered by William Blanchard, the commander of the Roswell Army Airfield. After that, Roger Ramey, who was the commander of the 8th Air Force, ordered the cover-up to begin. Now, whether he was working under higher orders from higher up the chain of command,
right.
And that's what I think happened. I think that's what transpired. But looking back on it now, it made sense to do that because the Cold War was just starting, and if we came across some anomalous technology, whether it was alien or not, it would make sense to hide it from our adversaries. So it makes logical sense that there would be a cover-up. Yeah.
Certainly. So, I mean, do you really think you're convinced that there's, or at least there was at one time, if not still ongoing, it's kind of a two-part question, you're convinced there is a cover-up?
I don't. It's so hard to explain really or wrap our head around what's going on. I think certainly some important cases have been covered up. There may be some really outstanding cases of UFO interactions with military pilots and that sort of thing we're unaware of because they're still held in secrecy. But I certainly think there was an effort to lessen the importance of this since the 40s, certainly since 53. Does that equate?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that.
I think so, yeah.
Because in 1953, I was going to ask you about that. Under the supervision or advice of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Robertson panel was assembled by the Intelligence Advisory Committee in December 52, and they did in fact meet in 53, and it was called the Robertson panel because it was, of course, headed by Howard P. Robertson. This was kind of like the beginning of the acknowledged cover-up, almost, if you will. Is that? I mean, that's my take on it. Is that kind of how you see this? I mean, break this down for the audience for me. If I've never heard of the Robertson panel, what can you tell me about that?
The Robertson panel was a CIA-sponsored panel, pretty prestigious panel. It was so prestigious that Dr. Jalen Hynek was only an associate member. You had, like you said, Howard P. Robertson. There was Luis Alvarez, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, whose son actually was the co-discoverer of the asteroid theory for the extinction of the dinosaurs at the KT boundary. So some pretty highly credentialed people. And you're right. The panel was created in late '52. It didn't meet till January of the following year, and it was only for a few days. They made a cursory examination of a few cases, but they strongly endorsed in their conclusions that the importance of the UFO topic needs to be lessened, meaning that in the public eye, we need to lessen the importance of the UFO topic, and they rationalized it as such that emergency channels would be full of UFO reports, which would leave us vulnerable to attack from the Soviets. From a military standpoint, that makes sense because there were so many reports coming in, people might misidentify things as a UFO, and since there weren't any other avenues to call in reports, then we might be vulnerable to a sneak attack. That does make logical sense, but it gave them an out to cover up the UFO issue. And from then on, UFO reports were either belittled, not revealed to the public, or given explanations that had they weren't supported by the data. So that, to me, is the real start of the cover-up. Prior to that, there was kind of an effort along those lines, but it really wasn't set in stone until that panel convened.
Well, now, there's a lot of rumors, of course, orbiting around the whole Robertson panel and the findings thereof. But before I get into that, one thing you just mentioned, and this is important for everyone to understand. You kind of touched on this earlier about the Cold War. In the late 40s and early 50s, in a post-World War II environment, the Cold War was very much a big deal on every level. It was everybody's greatest fear, It would come to nuclear war and that sort of thing. So there was a lot of concern about Russian technology and, you know, Soviet military capability and that sort of thing. So there is some logic in the fact that you wouldn't want the system, if you will, inundated with all these calls about mundane UFO explanations when really you need that open for, you know, like military reasons, for early warning and that sort of thing, and actual sightings of things that are relevant. Now, the Robertson panel basically, if I understand this correctly, William, and try to help me here, they basically said that either it was all, you know, naturally, easily explainable phenomenon that was readily determinable, you know, most often, but even the small percentage that wasn't obviously natural phenomena, they felt like could be attributed to that if enough time was spent investigating it. So in other words, they completely downplayed it, and it was all just like unimportant natural phenomena, no need to worry. There's nothing to see here, folks. Just go on home. There's nothing to see here, right?
You hit the nail on the head. Yeah, you're right. They felt the vast majority of UFO Saturday reports explained by mundane phenomenon. That's true. We know that to be the fact. The ones that remain unexplained, instead of taking a more reasonable point of view that some certainly might still be mundane with further explanation, further investigation, with more data, but some will most likely remain unexplained. Those might be explainable by extraterrestrial means. They didn't even consider that. They considered the point of view that, or they took the point of view that all the unexplained cases could be explained with more data and further investigation. All of them. Meaning that none of these are attributable to anything anomalous. No possibility of alien spacecraft at all. No interaction, which is unreasonable. The data we have does not support that. The data we do have does support the idea that the vast majority of cases are mundane, but that a small percentage remain unexplained despite intense scrutiny. That's reasonable. But their point of view was none of this is extraterrestrial in nature. Therefore, debunk it all. And that started the ball rolling, and it's a horrible situation.
Right. And now, this is a complex situation in a number of ways in that time, in the 50s there, in the early 50s, in 1953, when the panel convened. The Air Force's intelligence office, now it's gone by a few different names over the years, but now there were some rumors going around, I don't know if this can be substantiated or not, that, you know, some cases were really being looked at in great detail by the 4602nd Intelligence Aviation Squad. This unit, apparently, in the same time frame, was very seriously investigating these matters as if they were a matter of great strategic national interest. But on the other hand, you got the Robertson panel saying, oh, there's nothing to it. You know, it's just all mundane, you know, natural phenomena type explanations and stuff. So the government, if you will, was kind of like doing one thing, you know, with one hand and then telling the public something else. So obviously, even though the Robertson panel says it's nothing of a national security type interest, the Air Force was actively pursuing information as if it was. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. We have documentation that shows that the best UFO cases, the best cases that were really robust, had a lot of information, circumvented the Blue Book system, meaning that the staff at Project Blue Book, whether we're talking about the legitimate point of the history of Blue Book, where the investigations were actually going on legitimately under the leadership of Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, or we're talking about later on in Blue Book when it was really just a PR firm. It was just blowing hot air to the public. Throughout their history, the strongest cases circumvented Blue Book, even though that was military mandate that all UFO cases would go to Blue Book. That did not happen. So the idea that the government was trying to lessen that, that's true. The best cases weren't looked at, and when that opens up a Pandora's box of questions.
Well, exactly, and we certainly don't want to go all night on that, but obviously, the government's kind of saying one thing and doing something else. I really get that. I'm gonna get that vibe totally. When if you go back in a time machine and look at the mindset of the government and the public, and obviously the public, some elements in the public were at a bit of a fever pitch at that time for a number of reasons. Already worked up a bit about the Russians coming to get them with nuclear weapons or something, and now if you were to drop and there's spacemen visiting, maybe the public wouldn't have handled that too well. So that's certainly a factor in all of this. And I want to just ask you straight up, how much do you think it's just like just that cut and dry, that it's just a matter of, well, everybody's already stressed about this Cold War thing. They need to work them up into a total frenzy about dropping the spaceman thing right now?
I think that's a legitimate concern and a strong possibility. I wasn't so sure about that until this year, because the way the public, the way humans have around the world handled the COVID-19 pandemic, they've been selfish. They've panicked. They've made decisions based on a political point of view instead of looking at science and data.
Yes.
People have flown the coop about a pandemic. How would they react to direct alien interaction? I don't know. I'm a little more leery about it now. So I think that is certainly a point of view that the military may have, that the public may not be able to handle this stuff. And I didn't always think so, but with this year's events, I'm not so sure.
Well, that begs the question. I mean, is the cover-up still necessary?
I would say no. I think part of that is because of social media and the internet. There's so much fake news out there. You can't discern real from fake. It's so hard. Two, the way there's so many true believers in this field and in the general public that either believe none of it or all of it. And both those positions are unreasonable. It's more reasonable to take more of a cautious, logical approach to this stuff. But people don't do that. They either believe everything's alien or none of it is, and that neither position makes any sense. So because of all the misinformation that is digested by the public, and we see this all the time in the political world, there's no need for a cover-up. We're constantly chasing our own tails as it is. We are our own worst enemy. So there's no need to misinform us anymore. The government can just sit back and watch us do our thing. So does that mean the cover-up?
It's almost, it's like we misinform ourselves now. So that kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Thanks to social media and other internet outlets. That's a very comical but practical look. That's a good analogy, actually. It's a shame it is that way.
Yeah, any scan of the internet, any scan of social media you see things being posted that are clearly nonsense, but people believe it. You have flat earthers. You have people that believe Elvis is still alive. We didn't go to the moon. There are people living inside the earth. These crazy theories that are clearly untrue, but people believe them. So there's no need for the government to send any money to misinform us. We do it ourselves. So now, I've always thought prior to the internet, there had to be an effort to cover it up, because there wasn't this platform that we could misinform ourselves so easily with. But now we have the internet. Information flies around in a second. So the government doesn't need to cover this up anymore, because we're inundated with all this information, and most of it is fake. So that's kind of the way it is now.
Well, yeah, it's a technology thing in a lot of ways. And even like CGI, if you will, has come so far, and it's now so easy to access now. You have college kids making videos that look better than Star Wars ever dreamed about looking, just because of the modern software that's available and the computing power that's available to people now. So it's real easy to put out some pretty good-looking fake stuff. So the internet being what it is, you're going to get that out there. And it's to the point now, unless you're Bruce Maccabee or something, good luck. Really trying to, discern one way or the other, just, off the hip what you're looking at.
Yeah, Mike, you and I are both investigators. We're both painfully aware of that. That, if we see a picture of a Bigfoot or UFO or a light in the sky or some anomalous creature in a forest, and it's really clear and really sharp, first thing we think of is CGI, fake, because it most likely is. But we don't know that. It makes it so difficult because of the thousands of pictures out there of UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever. Are most of them faked or not showing the actual creature or a real alien spacecraft? Most likely they're not showing that. But a few might. But there's so much out there. It's lost in the shuffle. It's like a needle in a haystack. So, and you're right, with technology, it's so easy to fake this stuff. Any teenager behind a keyboard, if they have any skills with a computer, they can hoax an image or a video very easily, and it makes it very difficult. Yeah,
it's become easier and easier to fake stuff, and that doesn't make the investigator's job any easier, that's for sure.
No, not at all.
Makes it quite challenging at times. I'm going to give you a list of names, and I want you to tell me what these names have in common. Because people might not know. This is interesting. Former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Tellier. Astronauts Gordon Cooper and Edgar Mitchell. Vice Admiral Roscoe Helenkota, first CIA director. Brigadier General Arthur Exon, former commanding officer of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Lord Hill Norton, British Admiral, former Chief of British Defense Staff and a NATO head, no less. And Senator Barry Goldwater. What do those people have in common, William?
They have all publicly vocalized their thoughts about the reality of the UFO problem. They've all pushed for release of UFO information. Not all of them have seen a UFO, but they've all during their times in office, when they were active, not when they were retired, but when they were active, have pushed for some level of disclosure, some level of investigation, some desire for more information about what the government or the military knows about UFOs. They all have. We don't get that now. We don't get politicians, while they're in office, pushing for this information. We did back then. I would add Barry Goldwater to that list, another politician who, during his time in office, was pushing for this kind of information. So all those gentlemen have all pushed for and stated publicly with under no uncertain terms that they feel this UFO phenomenon is reality and needs to be addressed and could be a national security issue, which makes it important. An outstanding list of gentlemen. So,
Now, and I want to say, like, if there was ever a list of folks you might want to listen to, that's probably a good one right there. In that list, you know, you got senators and defense ministers and admirals and whatnot, but you also got a gentleman in Lord Hill Norton that was responsible for the safety of the whole free world. So these are some very important people to, in no uncertain terms, like you said, come out and said, hey, you know, they're not being open about this. You know, we need to know the truth because something's going on. So that's something of a very large magnitude in my perception. And, you know, from my perspective, that's something that really ought to rattle your cage and get your attention a little bit.
Yeah, some of the public, even scientists, have this point of view that, or this belief that UFOs only appear to guys named Bubba. They only appear to people that have a lower level of education, blue collar, farmers, day workers. They don't appear to scientists. They don't appear to politicians. That's untrue. Untrue. You have highly qualified people from various countries of all political points of view that have all stated bluntly that this needs to be addressed. From all countries, you have Canada, Great Britain, United States, Chile, Brazil, Russia. It runs the gamut. And like you said, people in high power positions with a high level of responsibility that have all stated clearly this is an issue that needs to be addressed. That speaks volumes, because these men would not fool around with their reputations. They would not say things unless they felt strongly about them. And says a lot about them.
And one of those gentlemen, Brigadier General Exon, the former commanding officer of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, is said to have told researchers Kevin Randall and Donald Smith that a spacecraft did indeed crash and alien bodies were recovered, and the whole event was covered up by the United States government. And this is certainly a gentleman that should know, as commanding officer of Wright-Patterson, which is exactly the Air Force base that would have been handling that sort of thing.
Yes. Yes, it makes sense. That's the area that's the base where the Foreign Technology Division was located. And certainly alien technology qualifies as foreign. But I recall my friend Kevin Randall stating that General Exxon, he asked General Exxon, are we looking in the right direction? Meaning, are they going down the right path? Meaning going toward extraterrestrial. Right. And General Exxon's response was, well, it's not the wrong path. Well, that says it all.
Right.
And you're right. He was the commander of that base. That's the place where everything went, because that was the logical place to store it, experiment on it, investigate it. And I think that's where it's still at to this day. But his testimony is very strong and speaks volumes about him and what he knew.
Well, and again, now in layman's terms, so to speak, like if you was to recover, say, an adversary like a Russian aircraft, like a brand new MiG or something that they had produced, and you wanted to examine it, that's where you would take it to do that sort of thing. In other words, that's exactly where you would examine foreign technology, just like the name would apply. And that could be extraterrestrial technology as well. And it would make all the sense in the world that if you're accustomed to, analyzing foreign technology, that's where you would also probably take stuff to be analyzed that was of an extraterrestrial, because that's also foreign, if you will. Same type of principle, something we don't know about. We need to, examine it carefully.
That's logical, yeah.
When you look at all this stuff, William, and you see all these people that's just come right out and said, we need to look at this. There's stuff being suppressed. There's information being withheld. It leaves little room when you start digging and doing a little bit of research. It leaves little room for any doubt about the existence of a cover-up. There certainly appears to be just such a thing. And my question to you here would be how, it's not just systematic, but like how deeply ingrained, like how deep does this go? Like, is there some ultimate governmental entity that is just putting the word out to all government agencies, hey, we just, cover it up, disinformation, whatever you got to do, make it go away, play it down, no big deal, nothing to see here, go on home. Is there an office somewhere in the Pentagon or something, somewhere, where there's actually, it all goes back to somebody's desk somewhere, and I'm thinking the president doesn't even know about a lot of stuff that goes on in the covert world. So you would look to somebody like the Central Intelligence Agency, maybe?
I think, I don't think it's as straightforward as I don't think there's an office in the Pentagon that is the go-to place to talk about the cover-up or find out information about it. But I think when the military wants to hide information, it compartmentalizes everything. So, and what the end result of that is that if you have, let's say, Area 51 by Patterson, you have multiple offices that are all doing different things. No one knows what each other is doing. In other words, the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. The end result of that is that no one person knows everything, which makes it a lot easier to cover up information. Therefore, the normal structure of the military, the way the chain of command works, would not apply to a cover-up, because that would imply that there would be one person that would know everything, and I just don't think there is. And I agree with you, the president does not have the right to get access to all of this stuff. He just doesn't. He's not in the snow. He's an elected official, which means he's a temporary figure. Yeah, so.
Well, now, one thing that I've always been really curious about, and this is a dead giveaway, is a 1958 television appearance by Donald Kehoe. He was actually cut off in mid-sentence because he deviated from the Air Force approved script, is the word on that. Whereas he was about to drop some news about some never disclosed information about things like Project Sign and other things like that. Are you familiar with that incident?
Yes, he was. I can't recall the name of the program, but he was going to be on a program. It was a televised program, and it wasn't really a debate format, but there was an exchange of information. And Kehoe was kind of mandated to go along with a Air Force approved script. Well, he went off the script and began to banter about and go off on a tangent on his own. And the story is that the broadcast was cut off to avoid having the public exposed to what he had to say. Kehoe, who was the best-known director of NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, which is a now defunct UFO investigative group, a civilian group like AFRO and NICAP and ZAPRO. He was the first major individual that was known to the public that pushed for the idea that there was a cover-up. Not that he was the originator of the idea, but he was the first one to really discuss it publicly. He was the first UFO-related investigator to really push the idea that the government knew more than it was telling. So when this scenario happened, it kind of, in the eyes of the UFO community, kind of confirmed the idea that Kehoe was right. There is a cover-up. Because if there wasn't one, they would have had no trouble with him just mouthing off about whatever he wanted to talk about. But clearly, they wanted to control the narrative, which is what you want to do with a cover-up. If you're even addressing this stuff publicly, you want to control what's being said, and they were trying to do that with Kehoe. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was just like blatant censorship. I mean, when you just cut my man's mic off, that's pretty open censorship right there. So something that they were definitely watching for and didn't want to get out. Because allegedly, there was some military studies that might indicate that UFOs were, some type of interplanetary craft or something. So, they're again a great example of just the Air Force saying, "Yep, saying too much, cut him off," or whatever. And then there's so many other examples. James McDonald is another name, of course, that comes up when you look into the cover-up theories and things like that. And he actually interviewed Gordon Cooper, famous astronaut Gordon Cooper, at one time about some footage that was allegedly filmed by two different photographers at Edwards Air Force Base of a flying saucer. They actually had two different photographers film this object. And then after the James McDonald interviewed the photographers and some other folks, Cooper had later said that military authorities didn't pick up the film. And they never saw it again, don't know what happened to it. So this type of thing keeps coming around where, the film just got missing because, the government got it or the Air Force got it or what have you. And now we don't know what happened to it or whatever. So, William, is there one of those Indiana Jones type warehouses somewhere where there's like 40 million UFO artifacts and videos and things?
In our dream of dreams, we'd like to think so, because that means there would be one place we could access all this stuff and break in and expose everything. But I think it's logical to assume, and of course I could be wrong. I mean, I've never served in the military, so I have no point of view. It's just an idea that I have that at least if whatever the military or the government has recovered, whether it's a large cache of information and technology and possibly organic body material, meaning bodies, if they have a large amount or a small amount, it would make sense that they wouldn't have it all in one location, because that goes along with the compartmentalization. The idea that no one person knows what's going on. It would make it easier to cover this stuff up if it would spread out at multiple military installations. Now, having said that, in my research draws me in the other direction. I think everything's the right field, right? Patterson Air Force Base. I think it's still there. Whatever we have, I think everything's there, because the facilities are there to investigate it, to examine it. Whether you're talking technology or organic material, it's still there, I think. But I could be wrong. I don't know. But it would be nice to at some point find out that there's one facility, I guess it would be underground, where everything we recovered is in storage. That makes for a great script in a movie, but I think in reality, I think it's somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, that would make a great script in a movie. But you're probably right. I mean, that's the military's way. No one person really needs to know everything. So to have everything in one pile is kind of unmilitary-like for a couple different reasons. But obviously, somewhere, maybe at least for certainly at one time, no doubt about it, there are some very interesting things at Wright-Patterson somewhere around there. And there's certainly no shortage of rumors or something like that. Now, if you had an organic, would that not be the ultimate impetus, if you will, for the reasoning behind having a cover-up? I mean, we certainly can't let them see this, right? Because we're really just going to get total pandemic.
I believe so. Yeah, because if you recovered technology, a craft or a probe or whatever, something mechanical in nature, you really don't know about them. You know something was created. You know it was artificial. You don't know who did it. You don't know who built this craft, but you have it.
Right.
So it leaves questions unanswered. If you have recovered bodies, that's different. Then you know who they are, what they look like, what they smell like, how they evolved. You know a lot more about them than you would if you just recover a craft. Because let's say an alien race recovered Voyager 2 out in outer space. They found out some of our technological advances by the 70s, but they really wouldn't find out much about us, as opposed to if they came across an astronaut. So, a body that's the holy grail of UFO evidence. If you have an organic body, you have an alien body, which to my mind is a little more awe-inspiring than an alien spacecraft because it's them. It's not their technology or their creation. It's actually them. And that's a fascinating thought, but it's kind of scary too.
Right. And, we do like to, and you touched on this on one of your recent broadcasts on dispassionate examination. We tend to, you always hear about bipedals, like 2 arms, 2 legs, bipedal, 2 eyes, that sort of thing. Yeah. But, there's just a good of a chance, perhaps, it could be much more like a cephalopod or something. We don't know, right? I mean, it might be, and I say that just to say it might be something that's not particularly attractive to us. It might be unsightly, if you will. So that might be further upsetting to many people, and that sort of thing.
We might be upsetting to them. They may not like the way we look, too. So
right, we might be gross looking to them, and probably are if they look a lot different than us. There's certainly a chance of that. You do see a lot of the, 2 arms, 2 legs type, extraterrestrial representation, but there's a pretty good chance it doesn't look like that too. If it was something pretty freaky looking, that wouldn't help the pandemonium factor or what have you. Well, William,
if you had, if you had a spaceship land in, say, downtown Denver or LA or Seattle, and aliens came out of the craft and they looked like us, that would be a lot less shocking. If an alien came out and had like 7 legs and looked like an insect, that would really freak us out because it's less like us. The more unhumanoid it looks, the more of an emotional reaction we'll have.
Right, that's right. That's what I was trying to kind of put into words. Like, I mean, and you put it good. I mean, like if they look like humanoids, that's like these Nordic type aliens. That's these attractive, blonde hair, blue eyed type, good looking. Oh, that's pretty smooth. That might not be too heavy. Or, but if homeboy comes off the spaceship looking like it's half man, half mantis, it's manx or something. Oh my God, 1950 science fiction movie. Man. Everybody's gonna lose their mind, man. So you gotta think about stuff like that.
Yeah, and
I just like, is that real too, man? Because like, you just don't know what the entity could look like. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios there. It just depends, of course, like, the environment they're from, probably. Just like we look like we do based on a lot of, like, because of where we're from. So that has a lot to do with that sort of thing. Well, you touched on something a minute ago about large city type. If you just had a sighting like tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. over downtown Los Angeles, where 1,000-foot wide craft just hovered a mile over the city, And, you know, everybody just saw it, and there was like 1,000 pictures and videos out of Yang, because everybody's got a cell phone now and all that sort of thing, and blow up the news, pandemonium. Would the government still try to explain it away? At what point do they throw the towel in and just, okay, the gig's up, yeah, it's the green guys from Mars or whatever, you know? At some point, you just have to give up the facade, right?
I agree. Yeah, that's in my mind, in my humble opinion, that's what would precipitate disclosure, total disclosure. I think, and I've always held this position, and I'm in agreement with some other researchers, Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt among them, that the government/military has no reason, no motivation to tell us anything they know at all. There's nothing politically advantageous to motivate them to tell us everything they have, about everything they have. It just won't happen. On the other side of the coin, if a spacecraft landed in downtown Denver or Seattle or LA, that's something that could not be covered up. It would force their hand. And I think that's what it would take for them to be completely open with the public. Will that happen? I don't know. And I worry about what would happen, because if a spacecraft landed in Central Park or in the middle of the Rose Bowl, we'd probably shoot first, knowing how humans are.
Right.
So I don't know. But, yeah, I think a direct interaction that could not be covered up is what it would take to force disclosure. Beyond that, I don't think it'll ever happen. And going back to the bipedal idea, you put a thought in my head. The reason I posted that, the reason I discussed that in one of our broadcasts, my other program I have, is that you know, the UFO literature is full of, I should say, the vast majority of UFO occupants that have been reported are bipedal in nature, somewhat humanoid. From the Nordics to even the insectoids are still bipedal creatures.
Bipedal, two arms, two legs type thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, is it reasonable to think that in the entire universe that all advanced aliens are bipedal in nature? I just don't think so. I think the universe is too vast. There's got to be other forms that are intelligent and technologically advanced. Maybe we haven't seen them yet. I don't know. But the more unlike us they are, the more they're going to garner a panicked response. Like the Day the Earth Stood Still, that movie, that wasn't unreasonable because a humanoid came out of the craft. That wasn't very scary. If you had the alien from The Thing or Alien, the movie, come out of the ship, yeah, that would be a different response.
A whole different movie then, right?
That's a non-humanoid being. Yeah, that's a different animal altogether.
Well, William, like, you know, the UFO thing has been a big part of our culture, not just in the United States, but a lot of places. But, like, here in the U.S. in the 70s, I was in middle school. I can remember the politicians like Jimmy Carter running for president. I was so glad Jimmy Carter won the election. We're finally going to get the truth about the UFOs. That's all Jimmy Carter said. The whole time he was on, we're going to tell about the UFOs. Okay, good. Okay, good. I'm ready to hear about it. He got in there, I ain't heard a daggone thing about no UFO, man. What's up with that?
No.
Just nothing. Just got cricket.
Yeah, it dropped. Yeah. You know, Carter asked, he told the director of NASA to look into the UFO issue. The director of NASA at the time told him no. He told the president of the United States no. That speaks volumes about one, the power or the lack thereof of the president. Two, the strength that this cover-up has over the political system. The idea that a director of an agency can tell the president no. That says a lot. But you're right, Carter, Gerald Ford, there's been politicians that have discussed UFOs. Yeah, prior to them serving as president. But once they get into the office, they kind of just climb up.
That's got more important stuff to do now. We'll worry about that some other time or something. It's always, the spill you get or whatever. But, it's kind of been at the forefront of some political issues here in the country for some time on different levels. Well, William, man, it's been great talking with you tonight. And we could probably sit here and talk all night about this.
Agreed.
I certainly enjoyed it.
Oh, it's always a good time. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. When we post this on Facebook, I'm going to share this on multiple groups. Mike, it's always an outstanding privilege to interact with you, and we could talk for hours about UFOs, cryptids, you name it, my friend, you name it. So, for my friend Mike Richburg, this is your host, William Pullin, signing off from beyond, not of this earth. We'll be recording another program in another couple of weeks, and hope to see you then. Until next time, everyone take care.